Good morning, everyone. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me okay. And from what I can gather from a couple of messages, there was something wrong with the link to the webinar this morning, which I've tried to fix. Very pleased that some of you have managed to jump on. I'll wait a couple of minutes as people start to join. I hope you're all well. Hope you've all had a great bank holiday weekend. What would be really useful for me is in the chat, if it'd be really nice to some of you just to say hello, just to confirm to me if you could that you can hear me okay. Also that you can see hey Helen, nice to see you. Thanks for the message this morning. um, you should be able to, as you join the webinar, be able to see a presentation that says what does outstanding apprenticeship provision look like. Some thumbs up would be great, just so I can I know that people can see that all okay. You can hear me, slides are fine. Thank you, Amy, appreciate that. So just gonna wait a few minutes as other people start to join. Excuse me. I'm really pleased, really chuffed that all of you could take the time this morning to come and join me on what is my first which is my first webinar in my new role as quality consultant. So I'm sure this topic is close to many of your hearts. Hey Becky, great to see you. I did see you as you popped up to see that you were joining this morning. It's lovely to see some familiar names and familiar faces. Thanks for coming and supporting me with this webinar this morning. And it's beautiful down here. I live in Wiltshire. The sun is shining. It's been a beautiful bank holiday weekend, and I'm sure it was the same for many of you. I'm still getting people drip feeding in, so feel free just for a minute or so just to make sure that you've got a coffee and stuff at hand. I've got mine, and I'll make a start shortly. Okay, I realise I've lost a bit of time, so I'm gonna crack on and admit people as they join, and I'm hoping that I'll stick to the hour today, my main goal today, really, guys, is to give you a little bit of insight, firstly to me, but secondly into my experience working for a provider that recently got outstanding in their first full inspection. I'll briefly kind of gloss over that and get on to the juicy stuff. It's a topic that is very close to my heart. It's a topic that I know obviously so many of you who have joined today are aspiring to, hoping to get all of the insights as how you can reach this outstanding provision. And so I'm gonna make a start as people kind of start to join. Just so you know, this is so just before I kind of start, I'll go through a few housekeeping pieces. So absolutely no requirement to have your webcams on, which is strange when we talk about outstanding provision. I'll go into this a little bit later on. Usually when I'm delivering training, it's the first thing that I say, please make sure that everyone has their webcams on. But today in this format, you may have seen that I put a poll out on LinkedIn about engagement at webinars because I was unsure actually how to pitch this, but it seems like the majority of people prefer to just kind of sit there nicely in the background, which is fine by me because I'm going to be honest, I usually do the same thing. So no requirements to have your webcams on, guys. Obviously, if you can remain mute at all times, you've all come into the webinar today with you on mute. So it should be nice and quiet for everybody, and by the looks of it, you can hear me all okay. So there will be a little bit of engagement. today via either on the chat, which I can see some of you have started already, and also I've got a poll, a couple of polls, and a couple of other things, really just so that I can get a flavour of the people in the room. There may not be an awful amount of time for questions today because I've kind of packed this webinar quite a lot. So if you do have a question, if you pop it into the chat, if you put a Q at the start of it for me, then when I go back over this, later on, I will look at the questions and I will come to you with some answers. So I will go and dig them out. Then, like I say, if I get time at the end and this goes much quicker than I thought it would, then I'll try and answer some questions. But if you have got questions that you want to come to me, then please do put them in the chat and I'll come back to you. And also, it's I always ask this question at the start of a webinar: is it recorded and are the slides are going to be shared? And absolutely, yes, that will be the case. So no problems with that whatsoever. So I'm going to start with a little bit about me, and I know that some familiar faces in the room obviously know who I am already, but just to give you an idea as to my little journey and why I believe I'm in a fairly decent position to give you a bit of advice on getting outstanding with Ofsted. So I started in apprenticeships over 20 years ago. And I like so many of you came into the industry probably as an assessor, more commonly known back then. My journey was, and my background is sport and leisure and personal training and fitness. And I started off really coming into an assessor role, knowing an awful lot about apprenticeships. And my journey from there has been quite varied in a sense that from those early days, I have gone from assessor and very much worked my way through into IQA roles, into lead IQA roles. I've also worked in curriculum, and then very much found my feet in quality, which was actually really my biggest interest really early on. And as I moved from one training provider to another, as we know, the industry is quite incestuous in a sense that a lot of it is all about who you know. I worked for smaller providers, I worked for really large providers, and eventually 4.5 years ago, or nearly 5 years ago, coming up to now, I was appointed head of quality at Apprentify Limited, and I will try to refer to them as Apprentify rather than we, because I only left Apprentify a couple of months ago. But Apprentify are an ITP up in Manchester. I joined Apprentify, say 5 years ago, when it was just a startup. So no learners, no provision. And from that moment in time, I was lucky enough to be given almost the keys to the kingdom, in a sense, where the managing director of that business said, Mark, I want you to come on board as head of quality. And, our aspiration is to get outstanding in our very first inspection. And this is very much your goal. And I took on that role. And we got at new provider monitoring visit. We had our MPMV in March 2021, so we kind of we had that COVID period where we fully expected them to come a lot earlier than they did. And at MPMV we got reasonable progress across the board, and for me, I felt a little bit downhearted in a sense, because I think we deserved significant, but that's by the by. We and very much we took that stepping stone for outstanding, and it's very much a long journey. It's not something that can be done very, very quickly, and I'll come on to that as we go further into the webinar. But we had our first full inspection in September last year, 2022, and like I say, I was nominee, and luckily we came out with an outstanding across all elements. And we, at the time, we had just about started doing skills boot camps, but primarily it was apprenticeship provision, and obviously delighted with that outstanding. And this is obviously the golden nuggets, or at least some of them I can give you today. Since then, I left Apprentify in literally at the end of March this year, and decided to go out on my own as a freelance quality consultant. And this journey over the last couple of months has been fantastic, in a sense that I get to do things like this. I get to work with lots of different clients. And I love to do everything about quality and how I can support others, and not just be a focal point in one business. So it's been quite a journey, and that's why I think I'm in a great place to give you some golden nuggets today. So what I'm going to try and do for the first time, in fact, is I'm going to launch a couple of polls for you. Okay, so there are two for you to do. So I'm not sure whether these will just pop up onto your screen or into the chat. The first one that I want to put up there is all to do with your role. And the second one, I'm not sure whether I'm able to put them both up at the same time. But also interested into where you are as a business in relation to, are you waiting for your new provider monitoring visit? Are you waiting for your first field inspection? It would just be a really good idea to find out where you are at in terms of your Ofsted either readiness or preparedness. So I'm hoping they've gone up onto the board. I can see results are coming through, which is great. Okay, so as these come through, just I think you should be able to see the results anyway. But we've got a few that are coming in as being nominee. Obviously, I think it's a great move by Ofsted to start having those shadow nominee positions. I think it's great for people who are either aspiring to be or will soon be a nominee, that they get to have that particular experience. I've put part of a readiness team. I'll come on to that a little bit later on. We've got a lot of you out there which are likely to be interviewed. There are obviously a whole series of interviews that Ofsted will do. Looking a bit further down at the other poll, we haven't got any that are waiting for new provider visits. So we're obviously looking at field inspections. We've got a few that are waiting for their first field inspection, which is great. And a number of you that are in that position that have already been inspected and looking to improve upon. So that's really interesting. Thank you for that, guys. Gives me a bit of context. So talking about context, what I want to do just quickly then is in the chat, if you go to the chat box, what's interesting for me is just let me know what outstanding apprenticeship provision means to you, because we're going to give a bit of context and stuff to it in a minute. But if someone was to say, how do you get outstanding provision, what would you say? For you, what is that golden nugget? What are what makes you outstanding? So if you could just go to the chat box for me and start typing in and put in a couple of things, I'll then come on to what outstanding meant for me, and context about how to actually get there. Okay, messages coming through. So quality of curriculum. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, absolutely. We'll come on to that a little bit. Demonstrating and showcasing the best. Love that. Love that, Jeanette. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Having the highest standards, all areas, backed by a team who are fully involved. Absolutely, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very, very difficult to just put, what is outstanding provision to you and say it in a few words, really. Natalie says all learners having the chance to develop both personal and industry skills and knowledge. Absolutely. Still got people drip feeding into the webinar. Stakeholder satisfaction, Rachel. Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. If you continue to put your bits in the chat there, I'm just wary of time, so I'm just going to come on to what it means to me. So ultimately, outstanding apprenticeship provision typically refers to obviously a very high quality apprenticeship program, and the word there is exceptional. And it's interesting there for me, it's that exceptional in comparison to other providers. Obviously, Ofsted inspectors would have been around a lot, and they would have seen lots of provision across lots of different providers. And that big image to that right hand side there, which says the wow factor, is literally what I would have put into the chat. It's that wow factor. It's that moment where I do this now in my current role in terms of doing quality reviews and deep diving into different standards and delivery. And what I'm looking for really is that wow factor is. What is it that goes, wow, God, that is either unique or it's something that's exceptional, something that stands out from the crowd. And I think that's the first takeaway I would give you is, what is it about your provision that has that wow factor, has that something where someone sits back and goes, wow, that is amazing. And that might be through either, outcomes that you're doing or some very clear intent, or the implementation on how you are delivering, whatever way it is, you need to have that wow factor about you. A little bit more context there. Typically provides learners with comprehensive training. That goes without saying. We're going to talk a little bit about tailored to their specific needs, goals, and interests, because for me, that is absolutely key. And I'll go into that in a lot more detail in a bit. You may have a combination of different variety of methods that you deliver in your training provider. It may be face-to-face classroom instruction, that mixture of off the job and on the job and workplace activities that your apprentices are carrying out. And that then goes with constant ongoing support and mentoring from experienced professionals. And that little middle paragraph there is where I'm going to home in on in a little while. Excuse me. So I've also put another couple of notes at the bottom where I'm going to focus a bit later on, which is in relation to the provision, offering learners access to latest industry skills and technology and techniques. And I'll go into that in a lot more depth in a bit. And that then goes hand in hand with giving your tutors, trainers, coaches, whatever it is that you call them, opportunities for professional development and enhancement. And that will be key. And all of those things kind of amalgamated ensure that your apprentices are prepared for their next steps. You may or may not be aware that careers is a huge focus for Ofsted right now. And we will cover that in a bit more depth. So that gives you a bit of a context as to what outstanding really means to me and the direction of where this webinar is going. So topics we're going to cover today. So we're going to deep dive a little bit into essentially, first of all, what is outstanding apprenticeship provision. We've kind of covered a lot of that now, but what it means in terms of the eyes of Ofsted. I've got some key components which I want to cover with you, and a few that we will go into a lot more depth. And we're going to then look a little bit at strategies for improving apprenticeship provision. So a few hints and tips there. We're going to focus a little bit on how we can improve that. And I'm going to give you some real life examples of some outstanding provision that's out there, and just give you a couple of minutes to read a little bit about there, and we can discuss what the common themes are across those. And then I've picked out 3 different types of common challenges out there, and as we go along in the webinar, there'll be an opportunity for you to contribute to that, because something I want to get out by the end of today is what other areas of apprenticeship provision do you need or would like advice and guidance in, so that I can mold where future webinars where they go. I then got a few useful tips. They're mostly around the actual inspection itself right at the end, and then just a conclusion and a little call of action for you at the end. So that's how the remaining 40 minutes of this webinar are going to shape up. So in the eyes of Ofsted, simple terms, and I'm sure most of you already know this already, but essentially, to get outstanding as a provider, you need to first meet all of the good criteria from the inspection framework. In my experience, the inspectors went through all of the good criteria first when it came to that last grading meeting, to make sure that we boxed all of those things off before we then moved on to the outstanding criteria. So, good being the benchmark, outstanding is where you take it to that next level. And the quality of education, can't remember who put it in there in the chat, but the quality of education must be outstanding as the outcome. And the other 2 paragraphs in there have come directly from the handbook itself, in terms of, it's likely that all areas are outstanding in order to get outstanding. However, there are examples where some providers will get good in some of the other outcomes, but quality of education must be outstanding. That last bit there is about safeguarding as well, and that goes without saying that your safeguarding must be effective. Obviously, safeguarding is a common theme across all of the inspection outcomes. I'm not going to go huge amount into safeguarding today, but it obviously is an absolute integral part of inspection, so that you must get that right. So in the eyes of Ofsted, essentially that's what outstanding is. So I'm going to talk through 2, 4, 6 little areas here of key components that I see to be absolutely critical if you're going to reach this benchmark. Excuse me, just going to have a drink. The first one being quality of education. Now, obviously, that is that's an outcome from the inspection framework, but it means much more to that than meets the eye. First of all, we've got there about a clear curriculum intent. I know that this is very much focused on, and you'll have webinar after webinar about curriculum intent. For me, this is about your business having clearly identified why you are delivering the standards that you are delivering in. In terms of the expertise that you have in the business, it may be backgrounds that key stakeholders have had in your business, and that's one of an area or an expertise that they're close to their heart. It then obviously then links to the government agenda and the skills gaps and what's happening locally and regionally in your area in terms of the reason why you have gone for those particular standards. And I don't think it's uncommon for providers to widen and broaden their spectrum of standards that they deliver. But for me, it's about knowing exactly why you are delivering that particular standard and how it meets the needs of the employers and the apprentices or candidates in your local area. That's difficult when you're national. A little bit easier if you have a catchment area that you're working to. Nationally, it's a lot more difficult to discuss and to prove. But it's, I'll come on to a little bit about what you can do with that a bit later on in terms of my helpful hints in terms of that curriculum intent and giving inspectors that clarity over why you do what you do. The ambitious implementation I've put in there. And for me, again, I will refer back to this wow factor. This is about how you deliver what you deliver. And that reasoning behind why you deliver in a certain way, whether it be face to face or online, and then how ambitious and creative you are with the tools that are available to you. And then evidenced impact. This is key. So, in terms of the way that you've delivered it, you've identified why, you've identified how, and then it's been able to show inspectors that impact. And it isn't just about maybe destinations or outcomes or success rates. They will spend a lot of time talking to employers and apprentices about the impact of your delivery and what it's had on them as people in terms of their careers and their business productivity. And so, having the evidence to put in front of Ofsted is absolutely vital. So 3 clear areas, obviously, in terms of quality of education, you've got the intent, implementation and impact, and that just gives a bit of context around that. That you develop apprentices' knowledge, skills and behaviours over time for their chosen career. Obviously, in terms of the way the standards are put together, you would think that's a given. But that's not always the case. I mean, at Apprentify, we focused on digital marketing, but in terms of digital marketing, that's an industry in itself, but every single little business has its own industry, its own sector that it's working in. And so it's how that particular individual, and I'll talk about this a lot in terms of tailoring their program, it's how you are tailoring your curriculum to the needs and wants of that particular either employer or apprentice. And then effective and innovative teacher and learning assessment. I've kind of honed in on this a little bit already, and I think it's really key when I come onto a couple of slides further on, but it's about you as businesses giving the opportunity to your delivery staff to be inventive and creative with the way that they deliver and not be too necessarily concerned about things not working first time. It's a learning curve. All of it's a learning curve. And if sessions become dull or mundane or the same, learners will pick up on it, and in terms of the impact on things like attendance and them turning up, you've got to keep things fresh, and that goes along, that's the same across any part of the business really, but even more in terms of your teaching, learning and assessment. So employer engagement, this is again is incredibly key, and I know that a lot of providers struggle with this, and that's probably not for the want of trying either. But employer engagement is absolutely key, and it's having that, first of all, that evidence that there is employer involvement and engagement in that curriculum design. Okay, making sure that there are touch points, contact, evidence that you are discussing why you deliver things in the way that you deliver and the sequence you deliver it in with your employers. Having those effective communication channels, it's that could be done in lots of different ways, and again will be individualized to the actual employer itself, and that when that feedback comes in from employers, that you are acting upon it. Rather than just going, maybe there's only one or two instances, it's making sure that you can show that you are acting upon their feedback. Personal development, behaviour and welfare apprentice, again, sounds like a given, right? Because those two are outcomes from the inspection framework, but they are vital. That learning environment, I'll come on to that a bit later on, absolutely key. Safe, secure, inclusive. Do learners feel like they can speak up and contribute in sessions? Are you capturing and monitoring attendance? It's not just good enough just to get a register. What are you doing with that information? And are you monitoring them? And are you following up on perhaps some red flags if somebody hasn't been there for a couple of sessions? It's that care and attention to the attendance. Enrichment opportunities for learners and employers to get involved in things locally in communities. Perhaps not something that is directly related to their knowledge, skills and behaviours, but absolutely, are you providing a platform for them to go on and learn and do other things, which key then goes into the development of their core skills, employability skills, and then ties into that careers advice and guidance, which should happen throughout the whole entire programme. Not just at the end, touching upon things that they could go on and do, not just when they finish their apprenticeship, but beyond 2-3 years down the line, and even further. I said I wouldn't go too much into safeguarding and health and safety, but ultimately they're key. The culture of safeguarding needs to be there from the off. It needs to be, that there's adequate and not just adequate, in fact, for outstanding. It's about making sure that staff training is at a certain level and goes above and beyond, that there's support and development in your business that supports them to go and do that. Apprentices able to demonstrate applied learning at the relevant level. I will just home in on this just for a minute. It's no longer good enough for apprentices to be able to say, I know what safeguarding is, and I know what prevent is, and I know what the 4 British values are. It's no longer enough. That is something that I might expect to be covered in the first month of a program. It's then building on their knowledge of safeguarding and all other wider learning, and how they can apply that to real case scenarios. Also it needs to be relevant to the level that they're working at. So you may expect that a level 2 learner won't go into so much depth, but those who are on level 4 and 5, their roles are management and leadership now. So you need to ensure that their level of safeguarding is appropriate to the level that they're working on in their apprenticeship. And even further there as a step on is that what's happening locally in their area in terms of regional or local trends and issues in relation to safeguarding. Are they aware of these? And it's about how you then embed that into either to your sessions or into your progress reviews, and how effectively you do that. The use of data. Data wasn't a huge part of our inspection, but it is important. They can only really use the published data that they have, and therefore you will have to, if you've got amazing gradings in terms of distinction rates or anything along those lines that are mid-year, you will need to present that to them in a formal way so that they can use them. That the data that you're using in your businesses is purposeful, and you're using it to make business decisions, and then that's being tracked, whether that's through a positional paper that you do on top of your self-assessment, and then maybe into your quality improvement plan. And then it's well communicated. Essentially, that means, anyone in your business, do they know what their success rate is or where you're aiming for? Making sure your entire business is in the know. And then lastly, leadership and management. So have you got governance in place that challenges and scrutinizes, and you can provide the evidence for that? That may be through a board of directors, it might be an advisory board, and they will look at the people that are in those positions and are they experienced and competent enough to provide that challenge and scrutiny. They'll talk to staff about their caseload numbers and about their work-life balance and their opportunities for development in CPD. So, what's your staff satisfaction like? That there's a clear culture of quality and safeguarding and good intentions, and that there is clear direction and open and honest communication within the entire business. So, for me, these are all key components. And I was going to do a word cloud there, guys, but I'm clearly looking at time, and so I'm gonna miss that one out. So apologies for that. But those for me are really 6 key points. These are 5 real life examples of providers. I've got 2 employer providers there, 2 ITPs and a college that have got outstanding. And I was going to give you a bit of time again to kind of read through these, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of words in here that's worthwhile you noting really. It all says about high quality training. It all mentions the word support. It all mentions about working closely with local communities, and you'll notice there the word careers are mentioned there as well. These are the things that working closely with employers and obviously the support you give your apprentices is a common thread about those providers that are deemed outstanding, and these are the areas of focus I would recommend to you looking at. I'm going to skip the question, and move on. I'm just going to focus on 3 main areas that I've already mentioned already that I think is really key for you to take away. The first one is about tailored training. And this was essential for us at Apprentify, that we were able to demonstrate that every apprentice and every employer is individual, and they have their own unique needs, skills, and experience that you need to, first of all, identify right at the start, and then second of all, identify the gaps, take the gaps, and then fill them. And you can see there in terms of the bullet points what I've put here. It starts with that initial assessment, that right person on right program, identifying their needs, where their skills gaps and their knowledge gaps are through an initial assessment, and then putting them onto the right program, which is bespoke and made to them. That you have that variety of effective assessment for learning throughout. I find this far too many times when I observe that tutors and trainers play great videos that have great content and things in them, and then some sessions are really kind of squashed together, so they don't feel like they have enough time to really check with all of the learners in the room whether they fully understood. If they are playing a video, once they've done that video, they don't just then move on and assume that everybody's understood it. There are regular knowledge checks, whether that's through effective questioning, whether that's through quizzes, whether that's through polls, whether that's through some kind of activity. It's not good enough just to do a huge topic and then just to kind of then pass over it. There's got to be regular checks so that that your learners are following and fully understanding what you're talking about. It's that setting individual learning goals. Okay, so that it's making sure that they are realistic, that they are unique to them. Many providers that I've seen have almost like a prescribed program of curriculum that they cover, which is fine. But it's then giving the delivery staff the opportunity to make them unique, is to move them around, depending on whether an employer wants a particular apprentice to have those skills earlier on in the program. Can you adapt it? Can you move them earlier on? Can you put that support in place and move around their ILP? So that comes then from that, that target setting and making sure that they are suitable in terms of the targets you're setting them, that they haven't got too many to cope with, and that it's set at the right level and it still stretches and challenges them. That's then followed up by impactful developmental feedback. which is absolutely key. It's think about you as a learner in terms of the feedback that you're getting from somebody, whether that be that you've completed a piece of work and actually you've got some written and formative feedback on there which allows you to take it away and then go and improve. That's the stuff that learners will remember, and the things that they will talk to inspectors in those interviews. And then there's that background feedback and support, that regular, effective, impactful support. And I've put there about flexible communication. This doesn't mean that, every learner needs to be contacted every 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it may be. It may be that actually one learner just flies and you can just do either kind of, regular little check-ins, whether that be through, direct messaging through your system or whatever it may be. It has to be individual to that person, and some people will actually need weekly check-ins to make sure that they're okay and progressing well. It's having that flexibility and being able to adapt. The next topic I'm going to talk about is off and on the job training. And this is the key, I think, and in my experience, a lot of businesses focus on that off the job, training, which is fine and absolutely key, of course. But it's making sure that sequencing of your curriculum fits in with them learning their knowledge and then taking that particular knowledge into their business and then developing that skill. They're getting that support and feedback from their employer and their mentor, their workplace mentor, and then obviously your delivery staff. And it's that 360 and that continuing support of off and on the job training and workplace activities. A few key points I put on there is that you're assigning meaningful tasks and projects. Okay, so that they're not just shoehorned in for a particular reason, that they have some purpose behind them, and the employer and the apprentice know why they're actually doing what they're doing. That they're not just doing work for their EPA. EPA is important, don't get me wrong. And starting off those projects and building upon them is a great idea, but it may mean that you need to set particular tasks for them to go away and do that's outside of EPA, but will help them develop their knowledge and skills. I've put there challenging yet achievable, and they increase responsibility over time. So you should see the standard of the work and the targets that you're setting them actually get harder and harder and harder throughout the session. And that makes the apprentice feel valued, because it means that the work that they're doing, they can see the value and the impact that it has. It's given then, I've put there just very quickly, the opportunities to observe and learn from experienced professionals. So, the opportunity to shadow other colleagues, the opportunity to go into different departments, and they get to observe good behaviours from people within their business. And if you can you give them the opportunity to pair them with either ex-apprentices or employers in a different sector? It may mean that they go and they spend a few hours, or they go online, or they observe something from another employer that that you work with, that is happy for them to sit in and listen. It's that's the wow factor. That's the opportunity of apprentice go, you know what, wasn't even my business, but they organized for me to go and do this and this, and then enabled me to go on and do that. It's those opportunities that are the wow factor. And then providing feedback and support. And I've put there, and the one key point there is about CPD, and I've put there, trainers take CPD opportunities by learning from their apprentices. Too many delivery staff think they need to know everything about everything, and that won't be the case. There'll be many learners that are perhaps using a different way of working or a different piece of software in their business that they've never seen, and so trainers should be able to take the opportunity to go, well, can you come and show me, so give me that CPD, so that they can then help them more effectively with their program. Absolutely important, the one at the bottom about celebrating successes as well as areas of improvement. And then lastly, I'm going to just go in a little bit about mentoring and support, which you can see, like I say, all of those providers that I put up on screen a minute ago, they all had this element of support. So first and foremost, pairing apprentices with experienced mentors. This comes from the start. This is about making sure that the learner has the right workplace mentor, in the business, the most suitable one, the one that's going to care for them and look after them, and then also the right coach, trainer, tutor, whatever you want to call it, that they are, paired together for the right relevant experience and background. Also, we've got offer regular check-ins. I've kind of covered this to some extent. It's having that flexibility. There's not one size fits all, the stretch and challenge, and then that variety of communication channels. Again, it's all about, one size doesn't fit all. And then that supportive learning environment is key, and making sure that clear ground rules are established right at the start for sessions. Are you asking for webcams to be on and mics to be on, and are you also asking them to be in a quiet place? Because quite often I see observations with learners in busy workplaces which really just isn't suitable. Collaboration opportunities. This is we've got wonderful things in terms of how we can collaborate remotely nowadays. Can you set up for projects to be done in terms of collaborative working, where apprentices can go away from the sessions and actually work on something together collaboratively on in the cloud, or it's providing those opportunities. And like I said, it's a given: open, trusted, transparent environment. So they're all key. Again, I'm going to move on from the questions because I'm just wary of time. So all of those things in terms of key components of outstanding providers for me. I just wanted to comment a little bit on how to improve apprenticeship provision and some strategies. And I picked 3 here. I've picked investing in technology and innovative learning tools, creating that culture of learning and continuous improvement, and offering opportunities for professional development and growth. So these 3 areas, beside of what you would consider as being good, are 3 big areas for me that takes businesses, takes ITPs, takes colleges to the next level. So that investment in technology and innovative skills, and don't get me wrong, I know they're expensive. I know they can be very expensive. Some of them don't need to be. Some of them just need to be clever about how you're using them and what impact you get out of them. But the first thing on there is obviously online learning. Now, obviously, I'm doing this through Teams, and you could tell obviously first thing this morning that it let me down. So, at Apprentify, we had a specific teaching and learning developed online system for them to join, a classroom system. Have you got the scope to tap into virtual reality? They are certainly the wow factor, and obviously the new AI technology in terms of chat GPT and how you're approaching that as a business. You may want to consider putting either a policy or a process around AI in terms of what you expect and what you allow, because otherwise that could be a bit of a free for all. That and learners love gamification. Who doesn't love getting badges and awards and stuff, right? So if you could bring an element of gamification into it, the learners love it. Is it tailored, not just off the shelf? So have you created e-learning courses or anything along those lines, and you've developed it yourself so that it's specific for your business rather than something just bought off the shelf? And what's really key, and this is software that captures evidence and can show impact. So you really need to think about the e-portfolio system that you're using. Is it fit for purpose? Is it does it show progress, clear progress? Can you capture evidence on there? Is it something that you can easily show the inspector around when it comes to it? And does it show the impact? Creating that culture of learning, coaching, mentoring, continuous improvement. That's a bit of a mouthful, right? This is all about, like I said earlier on in the webinar, about seeking new challenges. Are we empowering apprentices to seek new challenges, take calculated risk, and then learn from their mistakes? Sometimes it's very easy to play safely, but I would encourage your delivery staff to really give apprentices the scope to go and be creative and to go and really stretch and challenge them. And that goes the same for you leaders and managers in the room, and quality teams in the room, to allow your trainers to go and do the same. To plan something for a lesson and for it to go wrong is fine. It's okay. You learn best by trying something new. And, in my experience, delivery staff thrive under a coaching and mentoring culture. This is empowering them to go and improve themselves, taking the time to give them one-to-one coaching or mentoring, and it gives them that flexibility and want to go and above and beyond for you. And the last one there about offering opportunities for professional development and growth. This is, perhaps, outside of the standard KSBs, are you offering apprentices the option to be able to go on and do, industry certifications, or like I said, that job shadowing or mentoring programs that will ultimately help with their career further down the line? It may mean that actually they complete their standards really quite quickly, and some of them do. Are you offering different pathways that are, that interest them, that takes that to the next level? And again, I've put equally their delivery staff. How much do you commit to CPD in your businesses? Have you got allocated, almost annual committed CPD times for them? And are your trainers and delivery staff benefiting from directed CPD? I.e., I have seen a gap here, through either the OTL process or whatever, and I think you should go and do X and Y, but also they're coming to you and saying, I know I need to improve in X, Y, Z, and I also want to go and do this and that. Are you supporting them with that? Um, a few common challenges, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. I kind of asked the question around the people, my kind of circle of people that I know, in terms of their common challenges that they're facing, and three of them really stood out for me. The first one is that alternative sources of funding. Because obviously we are dictated to a little bit by the funding bands that we have. I know businesses that have really wanted to lay on progression routes for their learners, but actually the level 4 has a much lower funding than the level 3s, and so on and so forth. So funding is an issue. There's also that resistance or lack of buy-in from stakeholders, and I know I've kind of mentioned that investing in new tools and new technologies, and like I say, that there is a cost, there is a budget. It is, however, the type of thing that will take your business to that outstanding level. And so being able to get that buy-in is important. And we're also finding as well this difficulty in finding either qualified trainers, tutors, assessors, whatever you want to call it. It's a hard market to crack out there right now, and those that are really particularly good, they're worth hanging on to, and they're difficult to find. So these are the kind of three main areas that came up. In terms of strategies, I've just put a couple of ideas there. The funding thing is a difficult thing. Obviously, if you're a bit of a startup, or you're still only doing apprenticeships, obviously there are other sources of funding out there, and it's worth you spending some time looking at them and seeing whether you can tap into them. It's worth thinking and considering, is there any commercial options for you to go down? It's kind of looking at those different options, and where you can be efficient and effective in your business. What I have put there is this doesn't just mean deliver more standards, because like I say, it leads right back to that curriculum intent. You're not going to be able to sit in front of an inspector and say, well, actually, it's got a good funding band, which is why we decided to deliver it. We just won't wash. So stick to what you know, stick to what you're good at, and look outside of that for other funding opportunities. Communicating the value of apprenticeships to stakeholders. I've been in businesses where that's been a real challenge, and from a quality perspective, it's even more difficult, because you're not necessarily on the coalface bringing in money, and so you need to really be able to focus and highlight the impact of these new kind of quality improvement practices, or innovative techniques that you want to bring in, and really present them to your stakeholders in that way, to be able to show what the positive impact can have. In terms of that enrichment opportunity, again, those things cost money, whether that be time or whether that be resource, but it really does have an impact on your employers and apprentices. And I'm not saying you need to do them all the time. It's creating those golden nuggets of what's really going to be important, and laying those on and giving them the opportunity. And the last one there, I put about creating a mentorship program. What we did at Apprentify is we identified that we weren't always going to bring ready-made people in. And so we decided to run an academy where we would try to attract experienced people from industry, and give them a program where they could learn to become trainers and teachers. And yes, it's longer, but ultimately, if you're investing in their development, they have a really keen interest in wanting to deliver and teach. Then that was a really good route to bring people in from industry. And actually, some of our best coaches that we had at Apprentify came through that particular program. So it's maybe something you want to consider. So for the last few minutes, I want to just give you some useful inspection tips, and hopefully I've given you some ideas as to why I think and what I think you can do in terms of taking your business to the next level and looking at being outstanding. But these core tips is what helped me as nominee when going through inspection, and some of them will be fairly straightforward, and you'll go, yeah, I know that, but it's really important that I just stress how key they were to me as a support for inspection. So having that readiness team and plan. So hopefully, I know, going back to the earlier poll, some of you are looking to improve on your grade, or you're expecting your first full inspection. I can't stress enough how important having this readiness team was. This was a matter of getting a group of people who you think would be involved in interviews, okay, that have key areas of the business that they work upon, and you get them round the room and you make sure that as nominee that you are delegating them things to do. It's a huge role being nominee, and to have that backbone and support with you is really important. So get that readiness team around you, make sure that they fully understand how to respond when they're being interviewed, what things they need to get ready and prepared for, just so that as nominee that you've got that backbone behind you. So have that plan in place. Curriculum intent statements. Now, I said I would come back to this from earlier on. When it comes to curriculum intent, we at Apprentify wrote curriculum intent statements for every single one of our that we delivered. Essentially, this was a document that provided all of the data behind the reasoning why we delivered that particular standard. Some background as to the expertise that we have. We took some local data from regionally and locally in terms of how it's going to plug the skills gaps. And then we explained how we intended that learner journey to look. And we were able to complete those statements and upload them to the portal prior to the Ofsted inspectors come in. And what that meant is that they were able to read that prior to the inspection, and when they had those intent conversations with particular people in the business, everybody was on the same hymn sheet. Okay, and they could see that we had clear rationale for why and justification as to why we were delivering what we were delivering, and everybody knew. Even if we had somebody who was working in DM, knew exactly why we were delivering software tester and data analysts as well. And so I would strongly suggest that's a really good thing for you to go away and do if you haven't done that already. I've put an annual safeguarding report there. I didn't have one of these, but I bought one of these, and I was really pleased that I did. So when we did our self-assessment report, we also did a annual safeguarding report to supplement the SAR, and it basically went over the trends and basically the training and everything we did in relation to safeguarding. And it didn't take up then too much space in my self-assessment, and B, they were able to see in terms of safeguarding as a culture of safeguarding at Apprentify, and it went down really well. So if you haven't done one of those already, I strongly suggest you do when you do your self-assessment. I realise time. I'm going to go through these quite quickly. Obviously, make sure you've got all contact numbers and email addresses accurate. That sounds like a really stupid one and a basic one, but how many times we went to try and contact an apprentice and they changed their number, or we tried to contact an employer and that number was gone too. So just constantly updating your contact list is a good idea. We had a Teams channel for live feedback. So we had an Ofsted Teams channel that as the inspection was going through, we were updating people, and people were able to communicate about the types of questions that inspectors were asking. So I strongly recommend that as a good idea. have that Ofsted team prepared to deal with nominee requests. I was lucky. I had a team of people in the office with me, and as soon as I came out of kit meetings and things like that, I was almost like, can you do that for me, and you do that for me, and that for me. And that goes back to having that that team behind you. In terms of questions at interview, my recommendation and what we did at Apprentify is to focus on the 3 I's. Okay, so when a question was given by the inspector to whoever it was, that they responded with this is the reason we do it this way, this is then how we did it, and this was the actual impact that it had, and then followed up by an actual practical example of when we followed that up. And that kind of structure to responding to inspectors really worked really well. There's some big topics of interest there. I'm not going to rally them all off. They were interested in attendance and additional support and developmental feedback, that careers. I've talked a lot about CPD, EPA readiness throughout the entire program, and enrichment. The last point there is probably the most important, and that is consistency across programs and standards. Okay, what they will look for is when they deep dive into your different standards, if one inspector comes out and says, well, this is outstanding, this is this, and this, and another one comes out who looked at another standard and it's not consistent, that's where you're going to have your problems. So you need to have the care and attention across all of your standard provision. Useful to distribute prep questions to learner, staff, and employers beforehand, so they get the type of idea. I'm going to plug Fin here. I don't know whether any of you are members of Fin, the Fellowship of Inspection Nominees. If you haven't, my suggestion is Google it. Okay, they have a great resource bank there for members, and those prep questions were really, really useful for us to send out, just for the staff and the employers to have a read through before they were interviewed. And lastly, my last point there, stay calm. Ensure inspectors have seen everything you want them to see. So if they haven't asked specifically, make a thing of showing them as much as you can what you want them to see. So as a conclusion, so I've gone through key components, strategies, and then common challenges. I realise I'm rushing a little bit now. I wanted to end on time, guys, so apologies for this. I've just put a couple of call to action ideas here. So, if you haven't already, it's a good idea to conduct a quality review of your apprenticeship revision. Review where you are right now, and that's where someone like me, and of course I've got to plug myself, right? I can help you with doing a quality review or thematic review, or doing a deep dive into your provision and give you an idea as to where I think you are. Obviously, explore new strategies and technologies. Again, I can help you with this and give you some suggestions. If you're interested in the types of technologies and platforms and things we use at Apprentify, I can help you with that. And that last piece about engaging with stakeholders and embracing external scrutiny. Those providers that I've been working with fully appreciate somebody coming in with an extra pair of eyes and saying, do you know what, I didn't even think of that, and I didn't even think of this. It's really impactful. So I'm going to kind of tie that up now. I realise it's coming up to 11 o'clock and I haven't able to done the questions and polls, so I apologise to everybody. I'm just finding my feet on how long this would take, right? So I do apologise. I want to say thank you everybody for coming and supporting this. Like I say, I will send out the recording and the slides to everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want, like I say, if you want to, you're interested in the rest of my services, please visit my website. My website is www.simpkinsfequalityconsulting.co.uk. I've got an inquiry form there. You can also email me or DM me through LinkedIn. It's something I'm really passionate about, and everybody can get there. They just need to have the help and support behind them, and almost the bravery to go ahead and try things, because ultimately the best things come from those who try and go outside the box. They really do. So thank you everybody for joining today. What I'm going to do is just going to go back, so if any of you just got a couple of extra minutes in the chat, if there is anything that you want, that you say, do you know what, I would like to have a webinar on X, or I'd like to have a training session on something. Any of you that are still there have anything that you just want to post in the chat that would be really useful for you in the future, would be really good if you could put that into the chat, because then I know where to go with with some future webinars. But outside of that, if you want to just drop off now, I thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Maddie, something around enrichment and careers. Of course, yes, I could do that. That's a really good thing. I've also got, those of you who are left on here, something to do with progress reviews I've had a request for as well. So I'm thinking of doing something on progress